I was 32 years old when I found the text messages on my husband Richard's phone that destroyed my entire world. We'd been married for 9 years, together since our junior year of college when we were both 21, met at a campus coffee shop, dated through graduation, got married right after, built what I thought was a solid life together. I was a registered nurse working night shifts at the hospital. He was a sales director at a major tech company. We had a nice house in a good neighborhood. No kids yet, but we'd been talking about starting a family soon. From the outside, we looked perfect. Inside, I was about to discover everything was a lie. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower one Thursday evening. The screen lit up with a text message from someone named Vanessa. "Last night was absolutely amazing. When can I see you again? I miss you already." My stomach dropped instantly. My hands started shaking as I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode because we'd never had secrets, or so I'd believed. 4732, our anniversary, the phone unlocked. I opened his messages with this Vanessa person, scrolled up, and up, and up, months of text messages, hundreds of them, photos of them together, intimate messages, plans to meet at hotels. My wife suspects absolutely nothing, she's completely clueless, works nights so I have plenty of freedom. That line felt like a knife in my chest. My night shifts that I worked to help us save money to build our future, he was using them to cheat on me. I took screenshots of everything with trembling hands, sent them to my personal email address. When Richard came out of the shower in his towel, I was sitting on the couch with his phone in my hands. "Who is Vanessa?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm despite my racing heart. His face went completely white, then bright red. Then he immediately got defensive. "Why are you going through my phone? That's a violation of my privacy." "Answer the question, who is Vanessa?" He sat down, tried to lie. "She's just a friend from work, we text sometimes about projects." I held up his phone showing the intimate photos, the hotel reservations, the explicit messages. "Is this what work friends do, Richard?" He stared at the screen. His mouth opened and closed, finally gave up on the lies. "Fine, yes. I've been seeing her for 6 months. I was going to tell you eventually, I just didn't know how. 6 months. Half a year of lying directly to my face every single day, coming home from work and kissing me after being with her. "Get out," I said quietly. "Right now." He tried to argue, to explain, said he still loved me but felt unfulfilled, that Vanessa understood him better, that he'd been planning to ask for a divorce but wanted to wait for the right time. I didn't want to hear any of it. "You have 30 minutes to pack a bag and leave this house." He packed quickly, threw clothes in a duffel bag, kept trying to talk to me. I ignored every word. He left to stay with his younger brother Marcus across town. The door closed behind him and I collapsed on the floor crying for 2 hours. The next morning I took a personal day from the hospital, called a divorce lawyer, found one through online reviews. Her name was Patricia Morgan and she'd been practicing family law for 20 years with an excellent reputation. I went to her office that afternoon with all the screenshots printed out, 50 pages of evidence. Patricia looked through everything carefully. Her expression stayed professional, but I saw her jaw tighten. "This is a very clear case of adultery," she said. "In this state that can matter significantly for division of assets and potentially alimony. How much do you know about your marital finances?" I knew the basics. We had a house worth about $600,000 with approximately $200,000 left on the mortgage, joint savings account with maybe $40,000, Richard's $401K from his job, my smaller $401K from the hospital, 2 cars paid off. We'd been comfortable financially, not wealthy but comfortable, took 1 vacation a year, ate out regularly, no major debt except the mortgage. "I'll need absolutely all your financial documents," Patricia said, pulling out an intake form. "Bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts, retirement accounts, credit card statements, everything you can find for the last 5 years minimum." I spent an entire week gathering everything, went through our home office filing cabinet, downloaded statements from every online account I could access, built what I thought was a complete picture of our finances, organized it all in folders by year. Something felt strange when I sat down and really looked at our tax returns. We'd filed jointly every year of our marriage. Richard's income had been growing steadily and significantly. He'd started at $80,000 as a junior sales manager 9 years ago. 5 years ago he was making $120,000, 3 years ago $150,000, last year $170,000 as a senior sales director. His income had more than doubled during our marriage. But our lifestyle hadn't really changed that much. We still lived in the same house we'd bought 7 years ago, drove reasonable cars, not luxury vehicles, took 1 vacation a year to normal destinations, had nice furniture but nothing extravagant. Where had all that extra income been going? I showed Patricia the tax returns at our next meeting, laid them out on her conference table. Look at this. His income nearly doubled, but I don't see corresponding increases in our savings or our spending. Where did the money go? Patricia's eyes narrowed as she studied the numbers. That's an extremely good question. Let me formally request full financial disclosure as part of the divorce proceedings. He's legally required under oath to disclose all assets, accounts, debts, everything. The divorce process officially started. Richard hired an expensive lawyer, a partner named James Crawford at a big downtown firm. They filed a response claiming irreconcilable differences, contested the adultery claims despite all my evidence, wanted a straightforward 50-50 split of all marital assets. Richard's mandatory financial disclosure arrived 2 weeks later. I sat in Patricia's office while she opened the envelope. Inside was a sworn affidavit listing all our assets, the house, our joint savings account, his 401k worth about $120,000, my 401k worth $60,000, his personal checking account with $12,000, my checking account with $8,000, the 2 paid-off cars. Total marital assets of approximately $850,000. A 50-50 split would give me $425,000 minus my legal fees. Something still felt deeply wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling. 9 years of marriage with his income growing dramatically, and this was everything we had. I went back through our old bank statements even more carefully. Started finding patterns I'd never noticed before. Monthly transfers out of our joint account. Sometimes $3,000, sometimes $5,000, sometimes more. They'd been happening for years, getting larger as his income increased, transferred to account numbers I didn't recognize. I highlighted every single one with a yellow marker, brought the marked statements to Patricia. These transfers are going to accounts that aren't listed anywhere in his financial disclosure, I said, spreading them across her desk. This is a serious problem, Patricia said immediately. A very big problem. These accounts should have been disclosed. We need to dig much deeper. Patricia hired a forensic accountant, a specialist in finding hidden assets. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she'd been doing this work for 15 years, testified as an expert witness in dozens of divorce cases. Sarah requested subpoenas for Richard's bank records, all of them, every account he'd ever opened, every transaction he'd ever made. It took 2 months of legal wrangling, but eventually the subpoenas were granted and the records came flooding in. Sarah spent 3 weeks analyzing everything, then called us to her office for a meeting. She had a presentation prepared, charts and graphs and account statements highlighted. I found 5 bank accounts that Richard didn't disclose, Sarah said, pulling up the first slide. 1 local account at First National Bank with $75,000, 3 accounts at different banks across the state. 1 has $60,000, 1 has $80,000, 1 has $60,000, combined total of $200,000. And 1 account at an international bank with offshore capabilities holding $150,000. I felt dizzy hearing the numbers. Total hidden assets of $425,000, Sarah continued, almost exactly as much as he disclosed in his sworn affidavit. He basically hid half of everything. But Sarah wasn't finished. I also found 3 credit cards in his name only that weren't disclosed. All 3 are maxed out. Total debt of $90,000. I pulled the statements. The charges are hotels, expensive restaurants, jewelry, gifts. All dating back about 8 months. 8 months, his affair with Vanessa plus purchases before that. He'd been spending huge amounts of money on affairs while I worked night shifts at the hospital saving for our future. We filed an emergency motion with the court. Fraud, intentional non-disclosure of assets, perjury on his financial affidavit, concealment of debts. The judge scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks later. Richard and his expensive lawyer James Crawford walked into the courtroom looking confident and relaxed. They had no idea what was coming. We were already seated at our table. Patricia had 3 binders of evidence organized with colored tabs. The judge called the case. Patricia stood and addressed the court. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Harrison committed fraud by failing to disclose significant assets and debts in his mandatory financial affidavit. She presented the forensic accountant's report. 5 hidden bank accounts, $425,000 in undisclosed assets, 3 credit cards, $90,000 in undisclosed debt. Bank statements showing years of transfers, all organized and documented. The judge's expression changed dramatically as he reviewed the evidence, went from neutral to concerned to angry. Mr. Harrison, the judge said directly. Did you disclose all your bank accounts in your financial affidavit that you signed under oath? Richard's lawyer jumped in immediately. Your Honor, my client may have inadvertently overlooked some accounts in the process. It was an honest mistake during a stressful time. An honest mistake, the judge repeated, his voice hard. 5 separate bank accounts, $425,000, credit cards with $90,000 in debt. That's not a mistake, counselor. That's intentional fraud. Richard tried to explain for himself, said he'd been saving money for our future, wanted it to be a surprise, forgot about the accounts in the stress of the divorce. The judge wasn't buying any of it. You signed a sworn affidavit, the judge said. You committed perjury. You hid assets during divorce proceedings. That's serious misconduct. I'm imposing sanctions, and I'm awarding Mrs. Harrison 75% of all marital assets due to your fraudulent behavior and misconduct. 75%. Richard's face went completely white. James Crawford immediately objected. Your Honor, that's excessive. We request. The judge cut him off. Your client committed perjury in my courtroom. He's fortunate I'm not referring this to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. My ruling stands, 75% to Mrs. Harrison. The math was absolutely devastating for Richard. Total marital assets including the hidden accounts, $1,275,000. 75% to me, $956,250. 25% to Richard, $318,750. Plus he was responsible for the entire $90,000 in credit card debt from his affairs. Plus he had to pay all my legal fees, attorney fees of $65,000, forensic accountant fees of $20,000. Court costs of $5,000, total of $90,000 in fees. Richard appealed the decision. His lawyer filed multiple motions. All denied, appealed to a higher court, lost again. The process took 8 months of continued legal battles, but the ruling stood firm. I ended up with the house completely. Most of Richard's $401k, 3 of the 5 hidden bank accounts transferred directly to me. Richard had to liquidate his investment accounts to pay me, sell his BMW, move into a cheap apartment across town. Meanwhile, Vanessa disappeared from his life the moment the money dried up. Stopped returning his calls once he couldn't afford expensive dinners and hotel rooms anymore. I heard through mutual friends who knew people at his work that she'd moved on to dating another executive, someone with money who could maintain the lifestyle she wanted. Richard's job performance tanked during the extended divorce battle. The stress, the constant legal meetings, the financial pressure, his sales numbers dropped significantly. He got demoted from senior sales director back down to regular sales representative. His income was cut in half, went from $170,000 down to $85,000. He couldn't afford James Crawford anymore, had to switch to a cheaper lawyer for the appeals, lost his company car benefit, started driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic. Meanwhile, my life was transforming completely. I used my settlement money wisely, paid off our house completely, no more mortgage, invested $200,000 conservatively for retirement, put $100,000 in an education fund even though I didn't have kids yet, kept the rest liquid for opportunities. I went back to school part-time for my nurse practitioner certification, got promoted to lead nurse in my department at the hospital. My income increased from $65,000 to $90,000, got a raise to $100,000 after getting my NP license, bought myself a brand new car, took my first solo vacation to Italy, stayed in beautiful hotels, ate at amazing restaurants, felt free for the first time in years. Started dating carefully after a year of being single. Met someone wonderful named David through a friend's dinner party. He was a high school teacher, history. He was kind, honest, transparent about absolutely everything in his life, complete opposite of Richard in every way that mattered. We took things very slowly and carefully. I was completely honest about my trust issues from Richard's betrayal and fraud. David was patient and understanding, never pushed, let me heal at my own pace. 3 years after my divorce was finalized, David proposed. Simple proposal at home. No games, no secrets, just honest love. I said yes, crying happy tears. Richard somehow found out about my engagement, sent me a long email that I almost deleted without reading. I hope you're happy now. You completely destroyed my life over one mistake. I lost everything because you couldn't forgive me. Was it worth it? Was your revenge worth ruining my career and my future? I read it once. Then wrote back one single time. You destroyed your own life by lying, cheating, and committing fraud. You hid money. You spent our savings on affairs. You committed perjury. I didn't do any of that. I just held you accountable for your choices. Actions have consequences, don't ever contact me again. I blocked his email after sending that, blocked his number, blocked him on every possible platform. He was completely out of my life. David and I got married 6 months later. Beautiful small ceremony, just close friends and family. No big expensive show, just truth and love. We combined our lives honestly and transparently. Joint accounts that we both monitored. Open communication about every financial decision. No secrets, no hidden anything, just partnership. I got pregnant a year later after we'd settled into married life, had a beautiful daughter. We named her Grace because she felt like Grace after everything I'd been through. Held her in the hospital and cried thinking about how different my life was now. How much better. How real. Richard tried to reach out when he heard about Grace through mutual friends. Sent a message through his brother Marcus saying he wanted to meet his sort of stepdaughter since we'd been married when I met David. The logic made no sense, I ignored it completely. Had Marcus tell Richard to never contact me again. He had absolutely no connection to my new life. I heard through the grapevine years later that Richard eventually married Vanessa. She'd come back into his life once he'd recovered somewhat financially. Got a better job, started making decent money again though nothing like before. They got married in a courthouse ceremony. No big wedding, couldn't afford it. They had constant money problems according to mutual friends, fought about finances regularly. She developed expensive tastes during their affair when he was spending freely. Expected a lifestyle he couldn't provide anymore on his reduced income. He resented her spending. She resented his financial situation. They stayed together but seemed miserable. Meanwhile, my life with David just kept getting better and better. We had a son 2 years after Grace, named him Luke. Bought a bigger house in an even better school district. Both got promotions in our careers. I became head nurse practitioner. David became assistant principal. Built a life based completely on honesty, trust and real partnership. Everything Richard and I had never actually had. One random Saturday 5 years after my divorce was final, I ran into Richard at a grocery store. First time seeing him in person in all those years. I was shopping with Grace and Luke. He was alone. He looked so much older than his age. Tired, defeated, hair greying, face lined with stress. He saw me from across the produce section, saw my kids. His eyes widened. He looked away quickly, started to leave his cart and walk out. "Richard," I called out, not sure why. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. He stopped, turned slowly. We stood there in the produce aisle with my kids playing near the bananas. "How are you?" I asked, not because I cared really, just being polite, human. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice said otherwise. Everything about him said otherwise. "You? Really good actually," I said honestly. "Married to David. These are our kids, Grace and Luke. Great job, life is really good." He nodded slowly, looked at my children, looked at me. "Look down, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For everything, the affair, hiding the money, all the lies, I destroyed something good because I was selfish and stupid." I looked at this man I'd spent 9 years of my life with, loved deeply, built dreams with, who'd betrayed me completely. "Thank you for saying that," I said calmly. "But honestly, I'm glad it all happened. Led me to something so much better, something real." He looked like he wanted to say more. I didn't want to hear it, didn't need to hear it. "Take care of yourself, Richard." I took my kids' hands and walked away, didn't look back, paid for my groceries and left, told David about running into Richard that evening after the kids were in bed. "How did it feel seeing him after all this time?" he asked, putting his arm around me. "Nothing," I said honestly. I felt absolutely nothing, no anger, no sadness, no regret, just nothing. Like seeing a stranger. That complete indifference felt like total freedom. My daughter Grace is 7 years old now, my son Luke is 4. They know in simple terms that Daddy isn't my first husband, that I was married before. They'll learn the full details when they're older. Learn that sometimes people betray you, that you can survive it, that you can come back stronger. Build something better. Richard is still married to Vanessa according to the last thing I heard. Still struggling financially from what mutual friends say. The hidden accounts he'd built up over years are gone, paid to me in the settlement, used for lawyers during appeals, lost in bad investments when he tried to rebuild wealth quickly. He works as a regular sales manager now at a smaller company, makes decent money but nothing like before, lives in a small house in a mediocre neighborhood, drives an old car. Not the life he'd planned when he was hiding money and having affairs and lying. I'm a senior nurse practitioner now, make over $120,000 a year. David is vice principal working toward principal, makes $90,000. We have a beautiful 4-bedroom house, amazing kids, financial security, complete honesty, total trust, everything I didn't have before, everything I didn't even know was possible. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the 9 years I spent with Richard, the years that feel wasted now, time I could have spent with someone honest. I don't regret them at all. Those years taught me exactly what I didn't want, what I wouldn't tolerate, what real partnership should look like, what love without lies feels like. Richard thought he was smart hiding money in 5 different accounts, thought he'd walk away from our marriage with everything, have his affair and his money and his freedom. Instead, he lost more than half in the settlement, lost his career trajectory completely, lost his reputation at work and in our social circles, lost years to legal battles and appeals, got stuck married to the affair partner who only wanted his money. That's not revenge on my part, that's consequences, natural consequences of his choices. Actions have consequences, lying has consequences, fraud has consequences, betrayal has consequences. I didn't destroy Richard's life. He destroyed it himself through his choices. I just refused to let him destroy mine too, refused to let him get away with fraud. Fought for what was rightfully mine. My ex-husband hid $500,000 in our divorce, committed fraud, lied under oath, thought he was so smart, thought he'd get away with it all. I found his offshore accounts, his hidden banks, his secret credit cards, fought back with evidence and truth, won 75% of everything, and built a life better than anything we ever had together, better than I even imagined was possible. That's not revenge, that's justice, and sometimes justice is the best possible outcome. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that ever happened to you. Richard's betrayal freed me to find David. His fraud gave me financial security. His lies taught me to value truth. I'm grateful now, not for the pain, not for the betrayal, but for the freedom it brought, the clarity, the chance to build something real. My ex-husband hid money, I found it, fought for it, won, and built something beautiful from the ashes of what he destroyed. That's my story. That's my justice, and I'm finally free.